Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to VetNet. My name is Jason Dozier, Manager of Plans and Operations here at Hire Heroes USA, and I'm joined by two of our veteran transition specialists, Matthew Kohler, out in the Atlanta, Georgia, Alpharetta, Georgia office, and Taryn Mosley out in the Colorado Springs office. And today we'll be talking about resume writing. And before I turn it over to Matthew and Taryn, I just want to remind you all that we do these classes every other Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We've been doing VetNet classes for about 2 years now, so if you missed a class or you have questions about anything in particular, feel free to visit one of our classes that we've done in the past. We have classes on topics ranging from interviewing, networking, LinkedIn. We had a class last week in which we had a recruiter from the IT field come and talk to our veterans and our staff members about what a veteran in that field can come to expect when transitioning into that industry. So we do have a ton of topics, and we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube page or our Google Plus channel to learn more about the VetNet program in particular. And if you like what you see, we also encourage you to register for services with us here at Hire Heroes USA. And a veteran transition specialist like Taryn, like Matthew, will work with you one-on-one, either until you find a job or you get tired of it. So with that being said, we've been successful in what we've done. We've had 1,500 veterans and spouses get hired this calendar year alone, and we're not even through with the work we're putting in. So, like I said, feel free to hit us offline or follow us on one of our channels. But with that being said, Matthew and Taryn, go ahead and take it away.
All right, guys. A little bit more about myself. My name is Matt Kohler. I grew up here in Atlanta, Georgia, right after high school. I joined the Army. I spent about 4 years in the service. And when I was getting ready to get out and transition, like many of you, I decided, what do I want to do? What will I enjoy with my life? I thought that I was going to be working in professional sports, and like many of you as well, I quickly realized I was going to have to change plans, and I went into recruiting. So I have some experience with hiring managers and talent acquisition and resumes, and that wasn't doing something I was passionate about, that I wanted to get out of the military and do. And I found out there's jobs helping veterans like myself and like you guys, so I decided to join Hire Heroes to help give back in my own way. And Taryn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, again, my name is Taryn Mosley. I'm based out of the Colorado Springs, Colorado area. I am still serving in the United States Army Reserves as an officer, and I'm currently married to an active duty service member in the Army as well. I knew the whole time I wanted to go back working with veterans and assisting in any way that I can, and I don't think I could have chosen a better career than with Hire Heroes USA.
All right, guys. So today we're going to be learning about how to write resumes and resume building process. No one likes talking about building resumes, so I'll try and make this as pleasurable for you guys as we can. So getting started. Hold on one second. Follow along. There's a couple different types of resumes. A lot of you, want to get out and get federal jobs or government jobs. What you're going to be working with that is a federal resume. Those are different from civilian or chronological and functional resumes. Chronological is probably the most common resume out there. Basically what it is, it's just going back from your most recent position and listing your accomplishments at that position. And then after that one, there's a functional resume. Those aren't as common as the chronological. Basically what those are for is, say you have the same position over and over and over again, you can list your different skill sets that you've had to break it up a little bit, or if you maybe have a gap of employment, a good way to kind of explain a gap of employment or cover it up is to use a functional resume so it doesn't blatantly show your gaps of employment. So those are the three different types of resumes, and now we're just going to go into more of the chronological resumes, which is more of Hire Heroes USA's expertise. Taryn, do you have anything on the different types of resumes?
Well, just to touch base more on the federal resume. Now, granted, as a veteran transition specialist, we don't so much focus on federal resumes. However, I know a lot of veterans get out and they still want to do government work. We do have a lot of volunteers that do focus strictly on federal resumes. So if you are interested, all you have to do is tell your VTS, say, hey, this is the kind of job that I'm looking for. We'll both provide you either a functional or a chronological resume, but we can also put your name in to get you a federal resume started as well.
Great point. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go into how the resume basically looks, how our format uses. We've worked with many companies, and they all like this resume. So once someone looks at your resume, say a hiring manager or recruiter, you send them an application, they look at your resume. You want the first 5 seconds of what they look at, you basically want to slap them in the face with all the great information about your background and why they should hire you. So you want it to be formatted in such a way that your skills and areas of expertise are highlighted. So basically, what you want to start with here is you have your name and your address. So you want to bold out your name, have it nice format. We like to use a Garamond format. We've discovered when you're applying for federal jobs, a lot of those companies, they use basically scanning machines. So when you put your resume through, it's less likely to kick things back when you have it in Garamond and size 12 or 11 font. It's easier to read when you print out on paper, and when it goes through the machine, it's less likely to kick back. And Garamond just helps it stand out a little bit more than your typical, just Times New Roman. Then what we're going to talk about is you have your address there. Your address is pretty self-explanatory. One thing I would like to point out is a lot of vets, you guys are relocating. So if you're going to be looking for a job in Florida and you're located currently in Atlanta, you can list that you're, say Tampa, Florida, that's where you're relocating to. That way you're not eliminated already from the conversation when you put Atlanta, because companies not necessarily don't always want to pay those relocation costs. And sometimes you guys have a free move from the military anyway. The next thing is your phone number. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then email addresses. A quick way to lose an interview is you go to apply for a position and you have an email address that says all that in a bag of chips. It can just turn people the wrong way. A good industry standard is now Gmail. That's what it is currently. So just go and create yourself a free Gmail account, say john.smith@gmail.com. There's AOL out there, Yahoo, those can kind of date you sometimes, and just Gmail is more professional. The next thing is LinkedIn account. I'd encourage all vets and their spouses to go out and get LinkedIn. As a vet, you actually get a free LinkedIn premium account for a year, so that's something that's definitely beneficial to everyone. And you can also basically customize your link so it's not extremely long and it doesn't look as clean or neat. So after the heading, we're going to go ahead and talk about your professional summary. Professional summary is basically all about you, your accomplishments, basically kind of like an elevator speech, why they should hire you, basically in a paragraph form, and basically what it says is your professional summary. So what we like to do is you want to go ahead and start with your job title or what you're applying to be. Say out in the Army, I was a watercraft engineer, but I'm applying to be a veteran transition specialist, and I have that background. So you want to put veteran transition specialist and military veteran. You don't want to put watercraft engineer because that's not applying to what you're looking for. You don't want to give the recruiter any reason not to look at your resume. Then you want to go through, talk about your security clearance. That's great. Companies definitely want to see that, and they already know if you have a security clearance, you're going to be a great employee, and you'll probably pass the background check. Next thing, we basically just like to bold the highlights, the points. Your master's degree, your bachelor's degree, you want to go ahead and talk about that. And then you want to write a couple sentences about your background, what's important, what you've done, and your accomplishments. Taryn, do you have anything on the professional summary you'd like to add?
Just to kind of point out, you know, say if you don't have a bachelor's degree or a master's or an associate's, doesn't mean that we don't want to not summarize anything. So you've done a lot of things in your profession, either civilian or military sectors. But even if you have a technical certificate, that is something we want to highlight depending on what kind of job that you're looking for as well.
Yeah, certifications are great. You can talk about training you've had. It's okay, you're a vet, you're getting out, you might not have a degree yet, or you might not have one. That doesn't mean you have to put one on there. Sometimes leaving stuff off is just as good as adding stuff. I'll get later into dates about, you know, high school and that sort of thing, and how it can just date you, and the information could be irrelevant sometimes. So next thing after the professional summary, basically what we're going to go down to is what we call our areas of expertise. These are going to be 9 bullet points of your 9 strong suits. They're not adjectives describing yourself or describing your skills. They're a hard job skill set. We want to talk about, you know, project management, strategic planning. All of these different areas of expertise relate straight to money for civilians and hiring managers, or, you know, any manager hiring. So, you know, you talk about record maintenance, that's something that'll help save a manager money, and it's something that's going to make you money. What we want to do with these areas of expertise is you want to read through a job posting. This is what we call tailoring your resume. You want to read through a job posting, and you want to see, okay, they're looking for record maintenance. I have that. So you want to go ahead and add that to your resume. Your resume should be a breathing, living document. You're going to be editing it and changing it pretty much for every job application you're doing. When I work with vets, I like to tell them, what would you rather do? Use the same resume and apply for 100 jobs and maybe get, you know, 5 replies, or you want to apply for 10 jobs and spend maybe 10 minutes just tailoring each one, and you'll probably have a lot better success of getting callbacks. So that's something I always recommend to everyone I talk to, is tailoring your resume to that job application and your areas of expertise that'll match for that job posting. So next, after the areas of expertise, we'll talk a little bit about the differences of chronological and functional. So this is how the difference between both of them look. Like I said, a lot of the times the functional resume talks about your main areas of expertise or some of your skill sets. And if they're, you know, you've had pretty much the same job throughout the time in the military and nothing's changed, that might be something good to use. Or if you have gaps of employment, say you got out of the military and you've been looking for a job for a year, you can do the functional version. That's one, because normally when hiring managers, they don't see those too often. The more common version is the chronological resume over here on the left. So what that's going to do is basically just go through your, you know, previous employers or your current employers, and you want to talk about that. It's basically the most common version of a resume out there. And then, you know, we have the volunteer service that'll work with you guys on your federal resumes. Basically, a federal resume is just a lot longer. It's talking about everything you've ever done, and a, you know, chronological resume is the highlights of your career and what you've done, and you want to highlight what you've done that applies to the job you're applying for. Taryn, do you have anything to add on this, or?
You know, I think you actually hit just about everything.
Okay, so we'll move on then to what's next is the professional experience. The version we're talking about here is the chronological. There's a lot of tips and advice you can, you know, change to that. How to tailor it, how to change things, to dates. If you've had gaps or a few month gaps, you can basically, you want to just put the year right there of, you know, when you started and when you're ending. You want to, you know, talk about the company, and then you want to show your position, and then what's next is you want to go and talk about your job description. Okay, so your description of your role is basically, you know, just a sentence or two talking about what your job was, and then underneath that you talk about your accomplishments. You really want to use some measurable numbers to measure your accomplishments. If you guys don't know, if you have nothing to say about your accomplishments, there's a good technique to use. It's called the STAR technique. You basically describe a situation that you were in, the task at hand, what your achievement was, and what your role was for that. So let's use this as an example down here. Say I oversaw 3,500 user-based network and $25 million worth of communication assets with a 99% reliability rate. That's something that just basically drives home to hiring managers. They can measure those goals, they can measure those numbers, and it gives them, something to compare you to other candidates. Basically, on your resume, you want to highlight your achievements, your accomplishments, and you want to help distinguish yourself between other applicants, if that makes sense to you guys. Taryn, do you have anything for that?
I mean, just to touch base on what you said again, quantifiable data is about the best thing you can use in your resume. Employers want to see how much you've actually done, how many people you've led, how many tons of equipment that you've moved, how much equipment you've been accountable for. So, I mean, any numbers, the more numbers, the better. Try to make them, of course, as accurate as possible without far-fetching anything, but you have to start thinking about just if you were in transpo, the vehicles you were accountable for, the weapons, how many personnel. So just try to think as many numbers and throw that in your resume as best as possible.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know the numbers, there's tons of websites that we can talk to you guys about that go into, give you, you can type in pieces of equipment and it'll tell you how much they're worth. Or, we could talk to you about, different values or how to phrase things. A little bit more into your professional experience. A lot of vets, you guys, worked for one company. You don't have to list that company every time. I work with a lot of vets, and they want to say, oh, I was in the United States Marine Corps, and they want to list their exact job title in the Marine Corps. Oh, as you guys know, all the military terms don't translate into civilian terms. What we can help you guys with is talking about, say, I was a first sergeant. Well, in the civilian world, that might translate more to director of operations. So you basically, I'll talk to vets and like, oh, I have no managerial experience. Well, you're an E5 and you've led 5 soldiers. That's managerial experience. Civilian world, a manager is anyone that leads, about 3 or more people. So that's something you guys need to give yourself more credit for, and just work on that we can, help talk to you guys with. Just, job titles, job positions, the location, and another thing is, combat vets. If you're not applying for combat or security positions, staying away from certain words like Iraqi freedom or combat, stuff like that. You just basically want to help translate to what the hiring manager is looking for, because we all know they sometimes get bad, impressions from the movies about us that just aren't right, and we need to help, portray a better light on ourselves. So what we'll talk about next is military skills and how they translate. So here's a perfect example. We're talking about infantry. Successfully performed patrols in combat which resulted in 50 enemy KIA and secured 15 HVTs. So civilians are not going to know what that is. If you guys are working on your resume, try and read it to your spouse, a friend, and if they can't understand it, 9 times out of 10, a hiring manager is not going to understand it either. So we can work with you on how to rephrase things. Let's say instead of that first sentence, we'll use superior security operations management skills. Led and conducted over 100 combat patrols over a 12-month period in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, which resulted in the capture of 15 most wanted enemy combatives. That's a great, rephrase. Or if you're using something and you're not looking for a security position, or you're just looking for management, you can focus on your management experience, and you can call, instead of Iraqi freedom, you can talk about, international experience or international operations. That's something that translates directly to higher pay in the civilian world, and it's something that'll help everyone out.
I know for deployments, one of my favorite terms is global operations.
There you
Instead
go.
of anything as deployment, Iraq, Afghanistan, global operations.
Yep. All right, so here's a couple of the websites I was talking about. This isn't the values, but military skills translator. We just have a few different websites that you can use on, and we have all these sites on our website, and we can talk to you guys about. And when you register for services, we can go through them all with you as well. And like Jason said before, all of our services are free to vets and their spouses. So next, what we're going to talk about is education. Basically down here, this is all the information that couldn't fit under a job title or in your professional summary. Education, obviously, we covered that in professional summary. This is where you can go into a little bit more of depth. So back at the top, professional summary, we said you have a Master's of Arts. This is just saying it was telecommunications management. You can talk about the university it was from, and you can also cover the date. What I was speaking about earlier is dates. They can kind of get you in trouble sometimes. Say if you're an older vet and you graduated, say, 1998. Sometimes that can look bad to a hiring manager if you haven't been using that degree. Say, okay, well, he got a Master's of Arts. What has he been doing with that degree? That's a time I would just say leave off the date because it'll hurt you more than help you. But say you got a degree in the last 2 years, that shows you're still growing, you're still trying to professional growth. That's something I've definitely added onto there. And then next, certifications. Those are huge today. Syracuse University, they partnered with JP Morgan, and as vets, they'll do free online certification for you guys. Most of the time, everything's for free, and then some of the time you actually have to pay for just the certification test. But you're already saving a couple grand in courses, and that's not with your GI Bill or anything like that. So we want to talk about mainly about 5 to 6 certifications, but say you have a ton of them and they're applicable to what you're applying for, I throw them on there. Then we also want to talk about training and awards. Obviously on the slide there's not training, but say you're E6, E7 in the military and you haven't been to college yet. I'm sure you went through leadership courses. Those are something definitely to put on there, and just highlight that you've had that managerial experience and training. As far as awards, we like to recommend that you only put 5 or 6, and we want to put on there your top 5 or 6. So not the awards of everyone that as soon as the minute they join the military they receive those awards. Like I said before, you want the awards that'll help distinguish you between the other applicants. Taryn, do you have anything on education or anything like that?
No. Again, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Try to avoid age discrimination when putting dates, and then just put as many certifications and again your top few awards. You don't want to put anything as far as like global war on terrorism ribbon, because that just kind of puts off a bad name. Instead, Purple Hearts or meritorious service or any kind of accommodation medals is mainly kind of what you want to hit on.
And I know this doesn't apply to the resume per se, but if you're applying for a civilian position, don't put on there your disability ratings, because like I said before, they'll just get a bad impression or stereotype of you guys, so you don't have to disclose that information. So don't put you're 50% disabled, or that you're medically retired, or you're retired from the military. As a civilian or a 28-year-old hiring manager, they see you're retired, they're immediately going to think you're over 50 years old. As vets know, you guys can retire as early as maybe 37 or 38 years old. So that dates yourself as well. And as far as trainings and certifications or schools, feel free to change the title of them, just so they're more civilian friendly and understandable. Warrior leadership course. You could put manager training course, just so they understand what it is. You're not lying because that's actually what it is. It's a management course. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about some mistakes on resumes. We've talked about some of these. Obviously, one of the top mistakes on a resume is typos. That's something everyone can fix. Everyone nowadays has spell check, so you should be able to at least do that and check most of your mistakes. The next one is what I talked about earlier, is not tailoring your job posting or tailoring your resume to a job posting. It just takes that little bit more of effort. Instead of spending, that time, spending an hour sending out 100 resumes, spend that hour shooting out 10 resumes that you've actually tailored. You'll get a much better result, and it'll save you time. If you're unemployed, a good job search should feel like a full-time job. The next one is no list of skills or area of expertise. If you guys are leaving that off your resume, it's basically just not telling you, the employer, all the good things about you guys. So you want to make sure you have those on there. I get asked the question a lot, why not put more areas of expertise? Well, one, they are areas of expertise. So no one should have 50 areas of expertise, because these should be the things that you're best at. And if we're tailoring your resume, it should be the 9 most important ones that the job poster is looking for. Sentences are copied from the job posting. That's plagiarism. You guys don't want to do that. Just take a little bit of effort, time, and change their words around and put it in your own words of what your experience is. Like I said before, the inappropriate email address. You don't want to use your old football number, or a good thing, don't put your numbers in there. I get vets all the time, and it'll be like Big Stan 77. Well, obviously, I'm going to think he thinks he's Big Stan, and 77, I'm going to think is his age or the year he was born. And both, are not going to, they're going to date yourself. So just take the numbers out there, and don't give, hiring managers or a recruiter a reason not to call you or not to bring you in for an interview. Printed on a decorative paper and includes a photo. This isn't, elementary school, and it's not, a popularity contest. You would like to use some kind of different paper, hard stock manila. That helps, distinguish you guys between the people that just print themselves out on regular paper. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Taryn, on the mistakes on resumes?
Well, the best thing, talking about the paper, going to Office Max or Office Depot and getting actual professional resume paper, keeping that on hand. And when you go into interviews, you'll have the professional paper that you want to use. As far as the email address, again, no funky email addresses. Clearly put like Taryn.Mosley@gmail.com or first.lastname1 or first.lastname2@gmail.com is going to be the most professional. And believe it or not, they do look at that, and they do take it in careful consideration. And of course, typos. Please don't have any typos.
Yeah, so as a recruiter or a hiring manager, I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to send in your application, and like I said, they look at that for 5 seconds, or they're on to the next one. If they notice some funky, email address, what they're going to do is they're going to call their buddies over, and they're going to have a good laugh, and then they're going to go on to the next resume. Just so don't, have that happen, and don't give them a reason not to look at you, because your background could be great, but little mistakes like that was what could keep you from getting a job.
Exactly.
So here's a few do's and don'ts. Obviously, you want to target the qualifications for a specific job, like I've been telling you. That's called just tailoring your resume. We want to talk about translating the military skills so civilians understand. The professional email address, quantify your results, and we want to spell out abbreviations. That's the same thing with, Warrior Leadership School. Don't put WLC. You want to translate it to civilian terms, and we like to call it military jargon. Try and stay away from, the alphabet soup and spell out words just so that they can understand. If you're a sergeant, don't use SGT. Use sergeant or manager to help translate to civilians and help them understand better. If you don't, you know, I'll go over it quickly because we've talked about it. Don't make errors, grammar and format. Have people check over your resumes. Formatting is a hard one because, you know, people might not understand the format. That's why, you know, we'll help you with that. Use pronouns, I, me. It's great, you know, get someone to write you a recommendation, but you don't want to be talking about yourself. Be like Sergeant Kohler, and it's just third person, and it sounds like, you know, you're a professional wrestler, or you're just trying to brag about yourself. Don't use the photographs. Don't falsify data. Use your best judgment of, you know, understanding how much things are worth and how much lead, or just numbers. Be as, you know, as close as you can, and then be subjective. Use adjectives when talking about your skills, and don't be afraid. People in the military, a lot of the times, they like to say, you know, we did this, we went on this mission. Well, no, you did that. Like, you went on this mission, you led these troops, so don't be afraid to talk about yourselves. Does anyone have any questions, you know, before we wrap up with everything? All right, well, if there's no questions, thanks everyone for coming. We do this every other week, and appreciate everyone for tuning in. Jason, did you